thank you all for joining us today. For anyone who doesn't know, I am Liam Henderson, the chair of the Braille Innovation Group. So just for anyone who doesn't know, the Braille Innovation Group exists to help small companies find routes and succeed into the rail sector. Something like this is perfect for what we do because it allows people to share success of what they're doing in industry. And agentic tech is obviously all, I think, actual applications of agentic tech is quite a timely discussion because there's a lot of talk about it. So we have two examples here of people who are actually using some successful tech in the rail sector. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jesper and let Jesper lead his presentation.
Thank you, Liam.
Yes.
Good. So thanks, Liam. As mentioned, I'm Jesper Westerberg. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Predge. And I'm going to share some slides about how we see agentic AI, how we try to implement it in our digital solutions, and our view how this essentially will disrupt or change the software supplier industry in some way at least. I will distribute the time as following. Start to go into why do we care about this with agentic AI and our view and a little bit of background of how we see AI and large language models and how that actually fits in the things we are doing, because we are coming from the predictive maintenance decision support side as a start. We'll also go to our focus within that, where we see essentially the value to be created and what we expect these type of topics to develop into for the coming, let's say, 3 to 5 years. As well as some concrete use cases, things that we are working with today, which we already can see how it works, essentially from our first pilots and the first implementations. And lastly, of course, going through a little bit where we are today and how we will develop from here with the next steps and so on. And I will end with a short Q&A, so if you have any questions, you can, of course, always, I don't know if you can raise your hand or something in Zoom, but if there's some direct questions to the slides, we can take it maybe right away, but you can also maybe just write them down and we can take them during the Q&A. So, short, Predge and AI. As I said, we're a start for a Swedish company spin-off from more than 10 years ago within the predictive maintenance side. So it was founded around the concept that you can see on the right side, where that's believe there's a lot of data in industry, and we didn't want to bring another data source. We thought, let's focus on maximizing the value from the data instead. So like solve the pain points and try to find, okay, what's the pains and needs, and can we solve those pains and needs within the existing data sources? That's essentially where we started, to bridge the gap between the existing fragmented data sets and the pains within the organizations, within like the condition monitoring, predictive maintenance, other things. And of course, 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about cloud solutions and big data and all these buzzwords, analytics and everything that you should do. But we never actually been so into this, like running and being first in line with the buzzwords. We're more focused on, okay, what type of solutions do we want to provide? How do we provide it? What's the value in it? And then we let others actually put the label of it. And I think that's also relevant, of course, when we talk about agentic AI. That's not just something we ran into. We actually saw something that we thought was relevant to investigate further. So, I mean, as I said, existing data sources and fragmented data sets has always been a part of our DNA. That's actually where we started. And especially today, when we talk about agentic AI, that's still, of course, a huge thing. AI has also always been a part of what we do, because we do a lot of predictive modeling. But of course, 10 years ago, when we talked about AI, it's not actually maybe the same thing as we see today with these large language models and the agentic things, but at least spiked from there. And we always, I mean, the end product is actually what we do. Of course, there's been a lot of integrations and like generation of work order and such things, but it's also been a decision support that we provide some sort of portal interface to users to make them take essentially better decisions. And all of this like package has always been, from our point of view, highly focused on creating value. We don't do things if we don't see that it actually adds value to our customers. And that's, of course, highly relevant when we're moving to this AI trend we see today. I would say that actually spiked potentially with the large language models. And I think where we are today, especially for myself, who has a background within the software side, I would say the disruption that this actually brings to the software industry is inevitable. It will essentially change the whole way of how we create software, but also how we deliver software.
Well, do it in here. I was on there.
We see this essentially as two perspectives. One, of course, internally, because we as a company, we have a lot of developers as well. They build software, and of course, their way of working and their everyday life has changed a bit. They code a little bit different today, and they are much more productive and efficient because they also work with agents. As well as, I mean, me, myself, if you summarize documents or whatever you do, you of course use the agents for personal efficiency and automations and so on. So that's one part of it. And the other side of it, of course, okay, this agentic AI, what can actually bring in our solutions and how can we adopt this into our service deliverables to our customers? I think that's the key focus for today, of course. How do we, so a player who's been working for more than 10 years, providing predictive maintenance solutions, see that this agentic AI will actually add something to our service offering, and how do we see that we want to build it into our solutions? And if you see, like, up until today, we talk about decision support, we talk about predictive maintenance. What we've done so far until today, this is more or less been the end product in a lot of things. It's been dashboards, as you all recognize. There's been some visualizations. There've been some use cases and forms that the users can be a little bit creative, but they can't really do much. We need to actually define everything that they want to do with all the data. So we have potentially a lot of data. It could be like 10 different data sources, but we delimit it actually to the use cases that we already defined. And that's, of course, a limitation. And when we talk about agentic AI, maybe that's a hint that we see that this potentially will change a little bit. So we started thinking, okay, this have we done today. What do we actually think could change in the value proposition by adding AI agents to these type of solutions? So our value proposition when we started sketching this was that, okay, the first and foremost obvious one is that you have efficiency and productivity, of course. You have a huge increase in use case ramp up. If you can chat with all this existing data, like let's say in a perfect world, of course the limitations are set by the creativity of the users rather than the use cases that our developers has defined beforehand. So that's of course a good value. You also of course have some increased speed in some use cases. You can automate some part of your everyday tasks. But still, we have a quite limited user base who works with these type of things. Even though we try to simplify it, it still requires some sort of, that in-depth understanding. Okay, what do we mean with all of these different components? What do we mean with this type of failure modes? It's not intuitive for everyone. So the value we will bring would still be kind of low in terms of that. But if you don't start to think, okay, what more can these type of things deliver? And as I said, we have a lot of data. We only use a small portion of it, essentially, or bring it forward to our users. We see that one big benefit and value that we can drive with agentic AI is to use, democratizing of the data access. We can make it much simpler for a lot more users to actually work with the data. You don't need to be able to interpret different type of data sources. You can chat with the data in natural language, in your own lingo, depending on your own background. You don't need to be a technical professional. You don't need to be a data scientist to actually understand the different acronyms. You need to understand all the parameters, the different grains. All of those things you could actually simplify away. And in our point of view, that's where we want to see the biggest benefit out of it. That we want to democratize the data access from the data that we already have within the organizations. So it's not only about providing data to the fleet managers, potentially, the technical fleet managers. We maybe can provide data, the same type of data, but maybe also for the economy side, maybe for some business administration, operations, marketing, and so on. So that's like our initial value proposition. And what we did was we set up an initial pilot to say, okay, can this hypothesis work? How well can we actually interpret the data in a quite simplistic way in a agents, as you can see in the right-hand side, potentially. So what we then wanted to deliver is a AI assistant for rolling stock, because that's a little bit our domain. And I'm not going into too much details about the exact architecture, but if you on the top level, you can basically see it as 3 main components. You have the data and the knowledge, and of course the data has always been there, but now we need to add the knowledge element, and it's not maybe that easy to just add some additional documentations and some process that describes the context of the users and their protocols. It's also about actually explaining and documenting the data, the relationships between the data, and actually describe the data, what it does in certain contexts, and I mean, to enable a agent actually in reasoning to understand what it actually searches for in some ways. So that's a really relevant part, and I think when people try to implement AI agents, that's typically where they will meet the most severe problems, because it's not really that simplistic. It just explain and document how the data behaves and what it actually means when we start to look at it. The second part is maybe the key for the large language models, but it's the reasoning of it, of course. You need something that searches all this knowledge, select the data sources perhaps, queries the data, gets the understanding of it, can combine and interpret the results, and maybe do this iteratively. So it's not just one step. It's iteratively search knowledge, find the data, interpret it, and so on, to actually solve the question that the user has asked, for instance. And the last part of it as well, it's actually these results from the reasoning engine to actually give a formatted answer of it and deliver it as some sort of insights, maybe some explanations to what degree they need to explain it, and maybe give some further recommendations and next steps on how they can actually process on the quest that they are working on. So you can, I mean, on the top level, you have more or less these three components to work with. From a user perspective, the flow can be a bit more simplified. You have the user who has prompts some sort of question. I'm sure you all been at ChatGPT or similar solutions. The agent essentially searches for it, selects some knowledge, selects some data, analyzes, explains, and answers it in a good way. So that's more or less the simplified user flow within this. So we built a pilot working with all of these different type of data sets. And as I said, we are coming from the fleet conditioning side. So the most simplistic use cases we wanted to work with was, okay, what's the condition of my fleet? That would essentially replicate the dashboards that we have today. So we built this into our solution. You can prompt all the data access, all the different 9-10 data sets. So here's example on a prompt. Yeah, what's the condition of my fleet? Give me a summarized version with some recommended actions. And you can see here, as I said, this work with 9 different data sets. Its agent actually found the most relevant data sets. It's built more as a state machine, the analytics behind it. It summarized it fairly well. It did an overall view on the fleet. It did some recommendation on like the worst vehicles. It provided some evidence. And also explains a little bit the reasoning behind it and where it find the data. And of course, maybe in the end solution, we will not be this precise, but early on, we wanted it to actually highlight a lot of the data to build some trust for the user side of things. It also suggested a valid next step in this case. So, okay, do you want me to list the top 20 vehicles? And if we do that, yeah, this top 20 vehicle is essentially what we typically provide for our dashboard. So you have the assets, you have the worst state, you have their predicted, the remaining useful life, and you have the date when they were updated. And as a first use case example, I mean, this is exactly this we wanted the agent to be able to do. Understand the context, understand the condition when we talk about the fleet, understand the fleet itself, and deliver some robust results that the user could actually trust. And it's, as I said, replicates well with our previous things. But this, however, I mean, this essentially just replaces the dashboard it already had, and the dashboard, of course, is maybe a more convenient way to view this data. So if we dig deeper a little bit, we try to say, okay, I want to see the operations. How was the operation last week? And I hinted, can you give me some statistics from the last 30 days? And as you can see in the answer from the agent here on the right-hand side, yeah, it found the valid data set, did the compilation. It gave me a chart, exactly what I wanted, an interactive chart. I can see the asset in operation. I can see the trains in operation. And I can also see how it actually built this. It provides some sort of evidence based on the things that I wanted to address. You can also see that in the bottom, it actually lists the assets in sort of a table. It also do some relevant analysis for the deviations. It provides, in this case, a Z-score, which might not be the perfect way, but it at least explains what it has done and why it has done it. And it's valid results. The prompt I asked initially might not be 100% relevant for all use cases, but still, in 10 seconds, I got these charts, I got the relevant data that I wanted, combined from different data sets. If we go further with something more complex, here I started with, I wanted some sort of understanding of the maintenance history. So here I wanted, can we give me the wheelset exchanges for the last 12 months? As you can see on the right-hand side here as well, it identified the data sets. It provided it in a nice interactive chart. It also explained how it actually calculated and what it has plotted. Might have been even better if it provided it in ESOWeeks, for instance, but it explained how it split the data, and also recommended that potentially you could add it to ESOWeeks, and also if you just add another prompt, of course, you could improve it. But still, this is a 2 or 3 second prompt, and it already provides all this data. If we want to develop this further then, and let's say, okay, can you find any correlation between these wheelset exchanges and the temperature, for instance, the weekly average temperature, which we have in another data set, and I put some analysis on any deviations from that. So I wrote another prompt. Can you check the weekly average temperature? And as you can see, it added another time series in the chart with some relevant data series. So now you the wheelset exchanges and the weekly average temperature. It also lists them in the bottom, the week start date, the wheelset exchanges, the average air temperature, which is great. You could export the data to do other things, of course, if you want. If we scroll down in the response, you can see it also did some more than that. It actually realized, okay, we want to understand the correlation between these data sets. So it added another chart, a scatter plot, where you have the average air temperature and the wheelset exchanges. And of course, you could already see in this chart that there's some sort of correlation, but even better in this chart, you can also see that the weeks, which is each blue dot, where we have lower temperatures, we also have higher number of wheelset exchanges. So it's kind of clear correlation between these data sets. And this is something that you potentially get out in 10 seconds from integrating different data sets. And from my point of view, we also already have some sort of data scientist background. For me, it's also so easy, and the speed of which I can create reports, graphs, plot data, it's just vastly improved since working with this. I mean, this potentially, of course, if I had understanding of the data sets, could take maybe 30 minutes. If I didn't understand the integration, it would take a few hours, but still, now I do it in a couple of seconds. So only to be able to create this type of charts, these graphs, and just try my hypothesis in different correlations, it's quite impressive in terms of speed. So this is where we are a bit today within this. We see that by adding this type of chat agents to our solutions, we increase the use cases quite a lot. We increase the speed of users, and hopefully this will also help us to democratize the data access, to give more people in the organizations possibility to learn from these data sets. So of course, if we were to compare this to standard chatbots, of course, internal data access and execution of actions, and being able to tune our agents in these specific use cases is actually the key advantage, of course, for us. This is today, this first pilot we did worked quite well. We were very impressed with the results. We tried this with the first users. The results are okay. We have seen a quite wide interest from the user base, but it's still a little bit too early to evaluate if the value proposition is 100% valid or not. We still have these issues. Is it nice to have or need to have? How often will they use it? Of course, we want to push this and sort of create some daily advantages and automate some of the everyday tasks versus the campaign usage. But the future will tell. But next steps includes we will roll out this a little bit broader based on user credits to limit the users because it's still kind of cost expensive solution to host. We will implement a new version with some more sophisticated reasoning, some improved user interface, simplified response. Maybe you don't need to provide so much explanations all the time, such. And also further tools into the agent to execute maybe analytics directly, create new Python scripts that you can maybe run directly on your data, schedule and automate tasks directly from the prompt. Yeah. So this is, I mean, for us, we see this is how the future systems will look like. All systems will potentially need some sort of agent. There will not be a one agent fix all. The agents will always be biased. You need to tune them for a specific use cases. Our agents will probably be really good at understanding the rolling stock and the data around that, but it will not be like the perfect tool for HR or ticketing or for economy, for instance. So yeah, that was all from me. Are there any questions?
I should say that I muted everybody. So if you do want to ask a question, you need to unmute yourself first.
I have a question, Philip Oliver from Zenith Teams. Jesper, thanks very much for that. That was really interesting. We've been in a totally different context of been experimenting a little bit with, just with custom bots. But two questions come to mind. The first one question and one idea. First question, when it comes to the data that you or your clients hold, I'm curious to know the balance of data that's structured in tables and databases versus unstructured, sort of in a folder, a bunch of Word documents or PDFs and things like that. Obviously, a lot of it's real time as well, so I appreciate that. But how does the difference in the way data, in the data, basically the root data sources, how does that impact the building of and the design of your solution, your agentic AI solution? That I'll pause for the minute and ask you to answer that, and then I've got one other follow-up point.
Yeah, now I would say that, of course, the structured data, of course, is easier to work with. It allows us to model and also have some sort of understanding of what the users want to achieve with it. And we know where to put the data. And we know also maybe in which context it will be used in some ways. I mean, the unstructured data, if we talk about just PDFs or maybe more like what we would refer to as the knowledge docs, for instance, might be used in a different scenario, for instance. It might not be as relevant for our applications because we don't have so much unstructured data. For us, it's mostly the structured data, and that's what we essentially focus on. We have some unstructured, we will be like the assessments and inspections, but they are still maybe semi-structured because we know, I mean, in which context and where to put them in some way. So it's not like just completely unstructured documents that we don't really know what's in them. I mean, we always know essentially the content of it, so it's not unstructured in that way. So it's to answer the question short, it's mostly structured data, but it can be in different formats, of course.
Thank you, Jesper. And my last thought, which is more of a sort of comment / idea, I suppose, but I'm curious to see how you might use the agentic AI, the queries, the user queries that are going to be, as you said, in sort of fairly natural language, kind of slightly conversational input from users, because I imagine that you showed us earlier your kind of standard user interfaces, and you made the point that you'd like to move to what you're testing the idea of obviously using agentic AI so that you can have more of a conversation style rather than only the output, the standard outputs. But I think I'm curious as to the synergy there, because I guess as you let users have conversations and interrogate the data, you also have the opportunity, I imagine, to learn what kinds of queries and what kinds of data and reports and information is actually useful to them, which might then later on become a kind of standard button or a standard report or something else in your user interface. Is that on your minds as well?
Yeah, and I mean, even though we anonymize the request, we always log the questions. So we know essentially what the users are asking for, and we know how the agent actually identifies the documents, performs the query, and what data comes out. So of course, it's in our interest to try to. I mean, if it's frequent questions, that is a completely new use case. It's potentially much more convenient to implement it in some sort of standardized, static way, because it's also much cheaper, of course, because it's not really, it takes a lot of processing power to do those type of requests, even though they're repeated. Yeah, but yeah, as I said, I mean, it's also early on, so I mean, we're hoping that we will end up there that people ask the same questions. But as I said, we don't really know if this will be some sort of campaign usage or how often they will use it. Hopefully, we'll use it, of course, a lot, because that would improve our chances to to reach what you are suggesting.
Thanks, Jesper. And I'm glad you got the checked shirt email. Great. Thanks a lot.
There's a hand up from Yusuf.
Hi, it's Yusuf Hassan. I'm a consultant with KPMG, work as a data engineer. I have two quick questions. One is on, the data agents models. They are only as good as your input data is. So what's the quality of the input data? The other question is more about the agents over time. So what does the model accuracy be like over time? Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of data quality, I mean, we use this data today to create predictive insights. So they rely on this data in their operations, and the exact data quality is different from dataset to dataset and application to application. But there's always, outliers. There's occasions where we get bad data in, but we monitor the data quality in all data we receive. Because even before the agentic thing, we use the data for predictive maintenance purposes. And in terms of accuracy of the models, we don't really know. I mean, that's also, I guess, a little bit the thing with these agents that we provide. Sometimes, it will not be 100% perfect, of course. Sometimes it hallucinates, it maybe come up with things, but of course we try to limit those things. But it will be, we open the door, they can ask essentially what they want, and they can, of course, try to break it, and they can ask a lot of things, and then it potentially will not work that well. So that's also, of course, one reason to monitor it and see what questions are they asking, and how well are it actually solving their issues. But it's not, we can't say it's 100%. And I guess there's also a little bit the thing with this. It can help you give maybe a hint in the right direction, but it will not give you a 99% accuracy result after the first prompt. That's not the intended use case, at least.
Yeah, that's great. And also I liked what you mentioned about it's going to be multi-agent system. There's no one agent can solve all the problems. So thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Now moving on. Thank you very much, Jesper. And I'm going to hand over to Marcus now, who's going to talk about agentic tech, but for a passenger use case. So Marcus, please continue.
So I'm Marcus Mayers. I'm Chief Business Officer today from DataWharf, where we've been trying to make sense of mobility. We started this journey probably 7 or 8 years ago when we realized that there's a third dimension to travel, and that's quality. Not just time and cost, but quality. Because if you have a quality experience, then it's productive. If you can work on a train effectively, then that's just like being in office. So how do you bring quality to your time? If you have a disability, quality means something different. So we spent a lot of time collecting data about stations and unifying it, data about rolling stock, data about everything you might want to know about the journey, where the bus stops are, where the taxis are. And we thought, this is great. And then nobody bought it. And we're sort of wondering why. And we'd assumed with the age of AI that people would start to build their own AI engines who would need high quality input. Don't get me wrong, we're still saying sell the input data. But no one seemed to have a head around it. And so we decided to move our business to build an agentic AI agent to act as effectively a travel concierge for people, understanding the individual's needs and delivering the service and the information that they need before, during, and after a journey. So The challenge really is connecting people to confidence, and that's about anxiety, and it's about ensuring the point where anxiety or the pressure of anxiety doesn't outweigh the confidence in the next action, that leads to paralysis. So we're looking at that in terms of before the journey, during the journey, and after the journey. And I think what's really important about this is with an agentic AI agent, you don't have to deliver mass transportation anymore. You can deliver mass personalization because everyone has their own agent that remembers things about them personally. And we just want to help people, please look after this bear. Thank you. Well, in my view, every passenger is a bear who needs looking after. And that's what we're trying to do with our agentic AI agent. There's a range of things which you can see for yourself, which are written down about the type of things which we're looking and trying to deal with. If you go to a data level, then all of a sudden you see there is all of this data, masses of data, more data than a human being could ever really meaningfully observe, and more absorb, and more stations and more train types than anyone could really handle. And passengers are bombarded with this everywhere. And it's too much. And you see that. We've got some projects going on where we just talk about how passengers are blind to information. So how do we get the information which is relevant to the person at the right time? And that is where the agentic AI comes in. Same information, one platform through the phone. Because as people type into the phone, most of it typed into an agentic AI agent or even Google, then it can sift through this information for the pertinent stuff. And because DataWharf as a platform effectively works a bit like a project, it remembers the information about you as an individual. So if you have a weak bladder, if you normally travel with children, it will remember that and it will surface the information. So rather than you saying, can you tell me when the toilets are open at the stations, it will surface it and say, if you travel between London Bridge and Blackheath, then the toilets will be open for these periods of time. And there is a toilet in carriage 4 on this train, but not on the other train. So you no longer, as a disabled person, end up being singled out and having to ask for extra information. You're treated as normal. Everyone is treated as normal. If you want to work on the train, you need to know about a power socket, and it will always give you that information along with the journey information. Because this is the missing piece. The missing piece is quality. And that's what agentic AI allows you to do, is to search through these massive databases and surface the correct information to the correct person at the point where the decision may or may not cause anxiety. So as a front end, what have we built? Well, we built something that's got human style reassurance. You can ask it the same question as many times as you want, and it will not lose patience. If it doesn't know an answer, it will drop out and refer you to the relevant train operator's phone number or point of contact. Because what we learned early on is we don't want to be making things up as we go along. So, for instance, if there's congestion and a problem, it says, well, how else might I get there? Well, there are buses, but we don't have enough information about the buses to suggest you call this number. Or if you're in London, there's no problem. You can catch the 59 bus and it'll take you where you need to go. And this is what you need to do. Because it's there to support, but it's also there to build confidence. And in building confidence, you can't give people the wrong information because that increases stress. That, again, leads to the point where anxiety can lead to the point of inaction. And also, by giving people information in the right time frame, we can reduce rushing, which is a safety issue. And I do get carried away myself a bit in these presentations. And so I've sort of think I've described why it's inclusive by design, because we're trying to give people the information they need when they need it. We can also, because it's a chat bot, recent submission to the Welsh Assembly, we said, well, no problems. We can do this in Welsh for you as well. We don't only have to do it in English. At the end of the day, if we can manage anxiety, we will build trust and increase independence. And if you look at the figures for disability, I think there's about 3 million assisted travel journeys in the UK every year at the moment. And if you compare that to the 1.6 billion normal journeys, that's a fraction when you bear in mind that 25% of the population has some form of disability. Some of them can still use trains, but not all of them. So by building independence and building trust, there's a massive market there to actually enable people who are too scared to travel just because the AI is available and because it can deal with these anxiety moments. So this is the techie bit, and I am not great at the techie stuff. So if you have a technical question later, I will do my best, but I'm from a business background. So we've got live departures, we've got journey planning, we've got all the stuff you'd normally see going in. Then we've got our priority data sets around stations, around opening, closing. How far to the bus stop? Is there cycle storage? Is there a Costa copy? We've got a carbon calculator, and we've realized that a lot of people don't know how to spell stations like Brockenhurst, to name somebody on the call who lives somewhere called Brockenhurst, or even Machynlleth in Wales, let alone if you go to Scotland. So we have our own AI, mini AI, which will look at the entire word you put in and try and work out what you mean, rather than just using the first 3 letters. What kills me is Marrowbone. I'm dyslexic. I cannot spell Marrowbone. So I can never really find Marrowbone station on these search engines. So this is designed to deal with that issue. And along with the ability to calculate carbon. So we take this kind of static data, we put it into the AI engine along with the typical dynamic information. And that allows us to give a far richer and more detailed picture for the traveler. The next step we have is to start telling people about their normal commutes an hour before they leave in the morning. We've not done that yet. They say, don't worry, your train's okay. Or, oh, your normal train is going to be 4-car rather than 8-car. You might want to think about what you're doing. Again, it's all about quality and anxiety. But the beauty of the AI agentic agent is it is just like a human, give or take, and it will get better over time. It allows that mass personalization and speaking to you in a language that you literally understand. Speaks your language, whether it be the language of a wheelchair user, the language of a German, or the language of somebody with 5 children. Now, we've had some success. We sell some of our existing products like fuzzy stations are sold in South Western Railways. Our carbon calculator is sold into CO2 impact, and we've got the other. No, and somebody else, and our stations data sold somebody else. But most importantly, with First Great Western Network Rail and the Catapult, they have the Bristol Station Innovation Zone, and we were one of the 3 organisations chosen to trial. And we're actually trialing 11 unmanned stations in and around the Bristol area with First Great Western and Network Rail. The idea being that how do you deliver the quality of a manned station to an unmanned station, particularly when you start to look at these assisted travel issues, particularly given recent court rulings which show that the £120 compensation, which has been typical for failed assisted journeys, is now being measured by something called a Vento diagram, which is going to push the average up to above, or the minimum to 1,200. And if everyone who had a failed assisted journey on the rail network claimed, the cost of that would be 700 million. Now that's a new liability which came about in the end of October, beginning of November. And the technology we have is great because we can actually help manage people. The key thing is in this situation is, are you being managed? Are you being looked after? If you're not being looked after, then it needs that Vento failure. If you are being looked after, it might not. So just by having this as a point of communication to manage people can significantly reduce cost as well as improving quality for everyone who's traveling and has any specific needs or questions. And that all leads to a reduction in anxiety, which from my perspective then allows you to create a business case which would be accepted by the Treasury Green Book, for want of better words, which, given that GPR is coming, if you can be Green Book compliant, show a business case that the Treasury like, and it should theoretically flow all the way to the top. So that's what we're about with our trial in Bristol. But just because I do like to nail it and come back to it is all about confidence and independence. Can we get more people using public transport? And can we actually build a digital system which makes the railway and the transportation systems fit for the 21st century? And we believe at DataWharf that we can. So at DataWharf, just to try and give something a little bit, I don't know what the word is, I've forgotten the word, but basically is a little bit, I suppose, we have is calm. Every passenger receives clear, real-time guidance that turns chaos into clarity. The connection, data, people, and places link seamlessly, promoting calm, pulling it all together. And that gives clarity. We're multilingual. We speak the language, be it English, but you're disabled or not able-bodied, or whether you're from abroad. We speak the language and we can give people confidence. And the confidence allows people to travel with assurance and better quality and helps them make sure they make their connection. And so that's what we're trying to do: calm, clarity, connection, and confidence. And we believe this is possible because the new era of agentic AI and application to customer experience, and particularly that point where customer experience meets operational business case, which is around anxiety. Thank you for, it says reading, should be listening. I apologize for my typo. Any questions?
Thanks, Marcus. Let me just go to gallery view so we can all see you. There we go. If anyone has a question, again, you'll need to unmute yourself because I muted you. If I can take the first one. In your discussions with potential customers and operators, are you using the word agentic, or are you explaining the use case without using technical, what could be unknown technical terms?
I think that's a really interesting point, Liam, because if you say the word agentic, what generally happens is not everywhere, because some people understand, people start to panic, run around, or talk about something that their children are doing. So we don't really use the word agentic. We generally stick with that this is a passenger communication system that will help with the benefits. That seems to keep people calm. And later on, you might then be able to talk about some other bits and pieces. But that's where the thing starts up, is not agentic, because the industry isn't really mature enough to understand that there isn't really a risk with agentic anymore.
Right. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Joshua from Network Rail. Got my video on. Just a quick question, being like a rail user, how do you address like connection issues when you're actually on the train? Because 9 times out of 10, you haven't got a stable connection, and you want to find out if it's worth running to the next platform up the escalator when you get to Waterloo, for example. Like, would this agent be able to give you sort of insight into your connections?
In the first instance, what we're doing is we're feeding this through WhatsApp because it's a well understood channel rather than a separate application. So you literally do text it like you're texting a friend. And so the connectivity issues that you raise are at that level is, do you have WhatsApp connectivity, which is one of the lowest sort of bandwidth use cases for data that is out there. We're looking at the moment and looking at the use cases around what information you give to people on journey to keep them assured. So for instance, at Waterloo, we would say, okay, your train is coming in on time. You're coming to platform 13. The door will be on the left-hand side as you face forward, and your onward train from Waterloo East is on time, and we estimate a 12 minutes journey between the two. And we can update that as people go through the journey, because we're linked into the live journey planners and the departure boards and all the rest of it. We can also add to that, and by the way, although we're not built this yet, and the lift is not working, so you're going to have to use the escalator or request help from a member of staff. You need to request a member for help staff, say, please speak to somebody on the gate line. So we can give that kind of guidance to actually get people to the right place. Quite often when we speak to operators, what they're telling us is, look, sometimes we just want people to be told to come and speak to a member of staff and where the staff can be found. And we can do that. We can do that very, very easily. So that's sort of how we're looking at that, but we don't have all the answers. We're working through the personas and then the use cases. And then we've obviously got to prioritize this, because we've probably got £2 million worth of development ahead of us. We're probably about £750,000 worth of development in. But you can only go as fast as your investment and backers will let you.
Maybe a suggestion that a future sort of thing is to, those help buttons you get in stations. maybe something you can build into one and you can interact. That's
We do deal with that already. Is if you need help, then you can use this, and we're in discussions with certain operators around how it can be used instead of the help point, because every time people press the help point button, that costs £3 because it's generally outsourced to another company. So actually, if you can use Pareto and deal with 80% of the queries from a help point through the Agentic AI agent, and then just drop the 20% through to the help point, then we haven't actually got any numbers on the number of times help points are actually pressed, but it will represent probably a 60% saving on the current budget of help point presses. We wouldn't really want to touch anyone pressing the emergency button though, because that would be a little bit beyond our comfort zone from a safety and risk perspective.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcus. I've got a question, if that's all right.
Because it's you, Deb. No questions for you. No, go ahead.
It's not disruptive at all. I
That's
just
very disappointing.
well, maybe it is a bit disruptive. I just wondered if you'd considered any sort of gender disparity in your agent engagement, like women, particularly women traveling on their own, that sort of thing, times of night, all of that, like basically female life experience.
So what we have considered is whether we should be incorporating crime and antisocial stats in what we present. The methodology and the ideology of what we're doing is everyone is normal, but we will present the information that they need. So we're about to start ethnographic research, and I think the point you make is really interesting about sort of VAWG issues. And we'll be getting feedback, and we'll see what that leads to. But we don't want to single anybody out, but we do want everyone to feel special, if that makes sense. So we wouldn't necessarily be looking at it as a VAWG tool, but we would hope that we would be able to understand the information people need who are at fear or the reality of violence, and that our system should naturally cope with them the same way as would a disabled people. But it's a good point, and I'm going to feed it into our ethnographic survey about VAWG and see where she chooses to run with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The floor is open.
Hi, Marcus. Just a quick question on the data. I'm curious, what are the data sources you have for this program?
So many moons ago, well, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I did a program called Rail Demand Information System, RDIS, where we were using mobile phone data to count passengers. But in doing that, we learned an awful lot about the network, because we have people out going around the network measuring mobile phone strength. And out of that, we started to understand the nature and the characteristics of trains and the nature and characteristics of stations, because I've changed trains regularly. So as a result of that, and from ongoing work, we have gone and we've surveyed and unified and come up with their own ontology for rolling stock and stations. And so as a result, we have possibly the best in the world, certainly the best in the UK, survey information on assets on the railway in a way that pertains to customer usage, not to do with asset management, not to do with engineering, but to do with customer usage. So, for instance, we can tell you which trains have a USB point by the seats, how many there are by each seat, which have plugs and which have none. We can theoretically tell you about the Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is a bit of a moving feast. So keeping up to date with that's really difficult. And that takes resource. We've got somebody whose job it is literally to go out and survey places.
That's great. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Is that Edward
Yep.
Barton at Steer? I was curious on the approach to quality control, not necessarily in development, but in life. So this obviously a lot of potential for scale. So with an AI agent or an agent-based solution, how you're sort of trying to maintain quality and monitoring throughout,
So-
especially if there's real time data being fed into it that could change and such.
So right at the beginning of the of a presentation, I slipped in a couple of words which seemed quite innocent probably at the time, which is I said that it's before, during, and after. So we're not looking at the journey in terms of before and during. We're also looking at after, because we believe that feedback people give is going to be critical, and we can use this system to get the feedback. The system is so big, the data cannot always be accurate. And so you can either say, I'll do nothing because the data's wrong, or you can say, we can present the best available information and ask people whether it's right and use that as a feedback loop. So over time, we believe we'll get to the situation where our users will actually input into this, and we'll be able to use that data to build a better database to give better information. So we're hoping to get to the point where we've got a self-sustaining data set. But in the meantime, the approach is Pareto. We don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Otherwise, nothing will happen, and all these people won't be able to travel, and all these people will still be anxious. And that's why we have the dropout that, if this doesn't work, then please call this phone number, because we have to recognize that it won't always work. But what I would say, the problem with the dropout into the phone number is going to call this person up, right? The person is going to be using worse data than we have. So they won't actually be able to help. At least I have a person to not be able to help. So this is effectively as good or better than anything which exists in the system. People pick up on the quality issue mainly as a resistance to change issue, because they go, well, how can we do this? How can we guarantee it for the passengers? Without realizing it's better than what's already out there. So you currently have something which is worse rather than a step improvement, which is not perfect. And that's a real challenge for us in going about this. And we explain this. We went in for £150,000 funder. We explained this to the funder, and they weren't happy with the risk. They said, you can't do this to people who are vulnerable. I said, okay, well, they can stay at home. They can stay having no information. And this is the judgment. This is innovation. You have to sometimes just make a step. It's a really good point. I'm very passionate about it because I don't believe the philosophy which is adopted generally is the correct one, which is we need perfection before we go forward.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, even because there's the data behind it and also the way in which it's presented, or, the tone at which the bot would converse potentially, that might be the other thing to tackle. And I guess, yeah, you could even have people rate the conversation afterwards and see sort of where the low rating trends on that.
Yeah.
And I guess I was curious also in terms of if that monitoring was then done in a manual one-off check way or automated, and where there's a balance there as well. But one step at a time, I guess. It's all interesting.
The plan is to get the system to self-regulate and recommend changes and identify its own errors in itself. And that will need obviously a large degree of supervision by a human. But we're trying to build something that will grow of its own accord within the parameters, and actually start to, if you build this, the statistical data on how people actually travel and what the issues and crashes and travelers will be gold dust, because there isn't a single consultancy in the world who has that level of information or data, because you just couldn't survey it.
Agree. Very interesting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks to Marcus. Thanks to Jesper. I can facilitate if you want to get in touch with the speakers. Just message us and we can put you in touch. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us.